Bom dia, sports fans. Welcome to the wonderful world of the rather arrogantly named Atletico Clube de Portugal, who were founded smack bang in the middle of the World War II. But their style and manner of going about themselves is far from arrogant and big-headed. Nowadays, recent events have made sure that they've stayed a bit more humble, maybe a bit more humble than they could have ever imagined. The 40s were an interesting time period for Portugal. It was when the country was crawling with spies like Graham Greene and Ian Fleming, happily accepting rich refugees from all over Europe, selling rubber and tungsten to the Nazis, as well as Churchill. So Portugal made a heap of money at this time. And Portugal remained, entre aspas, in inverted commas, neutral. They didn't fight, but they managed to make a profit, just like Switzerland. But going a bit further back in history, this is Alcântara. And when the Moors, or the Muslims from North Africa and the Middle East, were here after 711, they spotted a grand bridge, which was built by the Romans, and so the Muslims called the whole area the bridge, Alcântara. That's not the bridge, of course. That's one going across the river Tejo to Almada. But this is lovely Alcântara today. After the Richter scale 9.6 earthquake of 1755 had destroyed the city centre palace, the king moved his court along the river to Alcântara and built the palace nearby, which is not to say that the noble people who eventually supported Alcântara, they stuck to Belenenses, who are an older club from the last video of Belém, and it was the people who worked in the textile factories, the chemical and the stamping factories, as well as the tanneries. They filled the stone-built stands, which are still lovingly painted in white, along with the club colours of yellow, red and blue. In 1942, the workers of Portugal were already stripped of their right to strike and trade unions were banned, but this didn't stop the club from being founded in that year. Portugal was deliberately isolated from outside influences thanks to its dictator, António de Oliveira Salazar. So for most people, you just got on with your life and you don't dream of anything outside what the national poet Camões earlier called the garden by the sea. And fair enough if you had a family to raise and you had a club to play for. And you think of these guys who play for them nowadays, they train 3 days a week, get paid a nominal fee, about €100 a week just to play, and they don't have much time for anything else. I'm getting dangerously close to being an apologiser for fascist dictatorship, but I'm not. Let's move on quickly. There's a really great feel to this club walking around, and it just displays the huge advantages of going to see lower and non-league football, including this lady, Tia, Auntie, as everyone calls her, Auntie. You got space to move around, space to buy a bifana, pork sandwich, or entremeada, pork belly. And you're nice to just distance yourself a little bit from the arrogance of the top three and the supporters who treat lower league football with such aloofness and arrogance. Lots of people sneer at you for being interested in this kind of thing. A lot of the older people of the club are reluctant to support them too fanatically, as they've fell so far from grace. But there's still a fair number of people who come to support them, and the atmosphere is just fantastic. Coming to this stadium, so this is the stadium itself, the Estádio de Tapadinha, is a bit like going to a post-war bombed out city. There's just this feeling of disaster that has just hit the club, and they're just bravely putting on a brave face. So this match, and you see the bridge there, beautiful. This rivals Belém for its beauty. This match was pretty important. They needed to, they could have topped the league if they had won, and the people at the top of the club at the top of the league, Estoril B, had lost, but they won the game eventually, and they're climbing up the leagues. Just to put this into context, at the time of playing, Atletico were in the third tier of the District League of Lisbon, so that's pretty low down. There are 3 district leagues within Lisbon, so now they're in the second tier. Hooray! So the Alcantarenses, as they're called, the men of Alcântara, were going to go up anyway, but they conceded the first goal and looked pretty unconfident for the first 20 odd minutes. They conceded first, and the team opposite are Palmeiras, another team from Lisbon, of course, and lovely feel to the club. There were 2 little supporters of Palmeiras in the stands, and they cheered very, very loudly when the goal went in. And the fans of Atletico said, "Oh, que barulho é esse? What noise is that?" This is me at halftime watching basketball. It's great with smaller teams. You can go around and watch the other sports, and it's all very pleasant, as you can tell. Gorgeous May day, and Atletico didn't have much trouble getting ahead of Palmeiras, and ended up scoring 5 pretty wonderful goals. The pitch was the slowest I have seen in years. It looked like they were playing on top of syrup or wading through toffee or something. So you could whack the ball as hard as you liked, and it would practically go behind you eventually. So they managed to get a 5-2 when there's a pretty spectacular goal coming up. But now it's time to deal with something pretty bad. The scandal, the spectacular decline of the club. So keeping in mind, this is a pretty old club, and it had the 14th most appearances in the Prem of any club in Portugal. Bearing in mind there are absolutely loads of clubs, I'll have to count them one day. Something terrible happened in 2013, and it has quite an interesting history. The thing that happened was with the SAD, which is an acronym Portuguese use for it's practically called the Anonymous Sporting Society. Most clubs have them, as I understand it. And the SAD of Atletico, watch this goal, absolute stunner. Definitely an accident, but doesn't stop it being spectacular. Wonderful stuff. Great scenes in the stands there. So the SAD, the Sociedade Anónima Desportiva, I think it's called, Anonymous Sporting Society, are practically the people who run the club, not the supporters. And they allowed the purchase of 70% of the club by a certain individual from China called Eric Mao. And he had already had a real history in going around Europe buying clubs, using them as a way to premiere or showcase Chinese talent. So the prices of those individual players would rise, bring them back to China, and they would get sold for more. So a bit of speculation. So in my opinion, this scandal goes all the way up to the General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping, who you may know as a completely football-mad individual who's doing a lot to fund football in his country, and that's why you see big players from Europe going all the way over there. And it also involves a man called Nelo Vingada, who used to play for Atletico when they were in the Premiership, and was at a certain time manager for a Chinese club called Dalian Shid. They had a president who was arrested by the government on what seems to be false accusations of corruption. He was then thrown in jail and mysteriously dies of a heart attack. Seems to me Xi Jinping saw him as a rival and wanted to get rid of him. So what happened to Vingada, the manager? He was helped out by said Eric Mao. Mao, I think, gives him a job somewhere else in China, I think. And later on, to thank Eric Mao, Vingada helps him buy 70% of the share of the SAD of Atletico Clube de Portugal. So he's got control. Uses the club, of course, to premiere... Oh, these are some ants. I just like ants and I ran out of footage. But he uses the club to premiere some Chinese talent, in inverted commas, to raise their price, of course. And he is involved in match fixing, which he had already done in clubs across the world. In Ireland, in Atle FC, as well as one in Romania, FC Clinceni. So he destroyed the cultures and local lives of people in many other places, including Latvia and Lithuania. So it's Portugal's turn. The goalkeeper is eventually has proven to have deliberately let some goals in, and we're dealing with not just a club being declassified. The A team is not allowed to play anymore because they don't provide players, and but we're also dealing with a compulsive gambler, in my opinion. Having read a bit about this on, I think it was Interpol, it seems these people who are involved in match fixers, they're just really good businessmen, and they eventually just feed their addiction by doing things like this. They are as close as it gets to evil in the modern day, in my opinion. It's dramatic stuff indeed. And quoting from a really wonderful article by the Portuguese website Bancada, or Stand, the Estádio de Tapadinha, this Atletico stadium, Once one of the most vibrant stages of Portuguese football, greeted us with a frozen silence and a worn frame. It used to be one of the most intimidating and punishing stadiums in the country. The field is massive and the teams freak out when they come here. It's now, however, that no one comes here. No one comes to see the matches. Later on, when they interviewed someone who was part of the team, one of them said, "Os chineses deram cabo de clube histórico." The Chinese finished a historical club. And the expression they use, dar cabo, to give rope, like giving someone a rope to hang themselves with. Yeah, miserable stuff, but the hope is there. The people still come. Eventually one or two people trickle along. That means more people come, and there are still people supporting it. So kudos to them, and it's a real energy I get from seeing people stick with the team, weathering the storm, for better or worse. Good on them. Força Atlético, and ciao for now.